It's difficult whether or not you're on the receiving end of it or you're on the giving end of it. But of course, not every magical story is true, but this one is.
What makes for a very good sales conversation? How do you produce very relevant conversations that add value to both the buyer and the seller?
People and sales as an organization within a company has a wealth of information on what the
Hey guys, welcome to the second iteration of Decoding Venture. For those of you who are familiar, we bring the best startup entrepreneurs, founders, professionals, changing the landscape of technology, sales, marketing, operations, name it. We have a very special guest from the Y Combinator cohort of 2019, Shruti Kapoor. She leads Wingman, and I would leave the mic to Shruti to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, really excited to be here. Yeah, like Surat said, we were part of Y Combinator last year, and Wingman is sales technology. So it's essentially a wingman for salespeople during their sales calls. Sales is difficult, whether or not you're on the receiving end of it or you're on the giving end of it. And we want to make it, a much better experience, both for salespeople and for the buyers that they interact with. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So I think one of the major themes that's highly discussed on LinkedIn, I'm sure most of the viewers tuning in have seen a million posts a day on, what makes for a very good sales conversation. How do you produce very relevant conversations that add value to both the buyer and the seller? And I think that's a very interesting challenge that you're trying to solve with Wingman. So how did you begin on the journey? What was that one specific event or challenge that you encountered that pushed you to starting up Wingman and building the amazing product that you have?
Sure. So I'm relatively new to sales. A couple of years back, I was working at a fintech company called Pioneer. I'd spent a decade in finance already, starting out with Morgan Stanley. And in this role, I was, working with them to help them figure out go to market in a new market. And very quickly, that became about sales. And very quickly, that became about the friction between sales and marketing and product in some cases. And through that, what I realized were two things. One is sales people and sales as an organization within a company has a wealth of information on what the market is saying, right? They are the people who are directly interacting with the customers. And this wealth of information is relevant not just for salespeople, but it's also equally important for people in marketing and product. Very specific example was we would get a lot of leads from marketing. 80-85% of them would get bucketed as not qualified. That would annoy marketing. That would mean that salespeople never wanted to follow up with those leads. And there wasn't a good feedback loop to tell marketing why we are getting so many unqualified leads. And so what I started thinking was, hey, how can I tell marketing to get better? How can I give them this feedback? But of course, that answer doesn't exist in the CRM. Right? Because no salesperson in their right mind is going to spend 5 minutes taking detailed notes of, why that last person put down the phone number. What I started thinking about was, listen, there has to be a better way to do this. You can't fight human behavior, but what you can do is you can definitely learn from it and maybe get technology to replace some of that friction. So I started thinking about what can you get out of recording and analyzing sales calls and not having somebody listen to them. And then the second part of it was also bringing in new salespeople was always a frustrating and time-consuming process because it would take you 5, 6 months to ramp each one of them. And a large part of it was for them to just, in some sense, become familiar with tribal knowledge, right, which existed within the company. But slowly they would learn, hey, okay, what is the best way to handle this objection? Hey, what do you say when somebody brings pricing up? Uh, and so those things were what became, another trigger point for me to say, listen, uh, this can't be the only way to do this, where, manually every time a new person comes in, people have to sit down and, maybe share with them what has happened in the past. And we started thinking about Wingman.
So could you go over maybe an example of a transformation using Wingman where one of your customers was encountering a challenge and then they plugged Wingman in and then they, like they saw revenue increasing and, all the magic that happens.
And not just a word of caution, not every magical story is true, but this one is. So, one of the things that we realize is that takes long for people to kind of learn, unlearn, and decode is when a customer is saying something, what is it that they actually. And so, one of the companies that I was working with, through the analysis of all of their calls, they realized that a lot of people who were buying or not buying from them had a question around trust, right? And it wasn't even very easy for them to decode that that question was around trust, because the question could be phrased in many ways. The question could be phrased as, hey, do you have other customers in Arizona? Do you, where are you based out of? Have you worked with another media and tech company? Have you, done this particular thing? So all of those questions eventually boil down to, listen, what will happen if I bring you on board? Will I get fired or will I be applauded for making this decision? And so once Wingman was able to show them that with the analysis of their sales calls, there were a couple of recommendations on what they could do. And one of them was to preempt a question like this and build that into the opening script, right? So what the only change that they made was to go in and say, listen, we are going to add to our script in the opener saying that, hey, we are so and so, we have customers in these many countries, these are some of our top customers, and that's it, right? So they just included that in their opener. And two things happened. One is the trust questions that they were encountering later in the funnel around, hey, where are you based, etc., disappeared. And the second thing was that in that 3-month period where they ran this and they coached their salespeople to adopt this in the script, their conversion rates actually doubled. And
Very interesting. So definitely, I think as the world is getting more distributed, it makes a lot of sense to understand the context behind some of these questions and how you build trust. I think that's the essence of any sales conversation and any successful one is how well you're able to establish trust. Very very interesting case study. So getting back into the like the broader topic that we wish to address to the audience about personalization and sales using AI. So I think it's a very a specific challenge that we're trying to solve in-house is who do you like who to spend time on and who not to spend time on, from the start. Let's say you are given 1,000 leads. How would you know, hey, I should reach out to these 500 and probably ignore the other 500 because they may not convert to a sale. So that's something that we're working on in-house, and especially because being in the services space at TechTouch, what I've noticed is it's a huge burn. Like we have to send out outreaches to 1,000 people, 2,000 people a month, and maybe five get on a call because either a lot of people are building technology in-house, or second is they're not educated about the latest in technologies to know what kind of benefits AI, machine learning, and all these cool technologies could bring them. So that we deducted that hey, we should be able to optimize and find out, hey, reach out to these many people out of a list of 1,000, 2,000, and focus on them, serve them better. So you're able to personalize the conversations more instead of going in with an opener like, hey, we sell XYZ, we have like 10 engineers, we've worked like 25 years, written million lines of code. Instead, what we could do is very specifically, look at, hey, okay, so these 500 people want to buy. So I'm going to go in and going to say, hey, I noticed your business does this, this, and this. These are the like interesting transformations we can bring. This is the business impact that we can bring to your organization. And here's some insights, like a one-pager insight. What do you think? So even if the customer is not converted, he's getting good value because he's getting information, he's getting more educated about the kinds of technologies out there in the market. We want to look at it as a pull effect rather than a push effect where we're, pushing out messages. It's more like it's almost like outbound, semi-inbound, where, very targeted messages and then have people come in, able to take a list, let's say of 1,000 people. Initially, we divide that list into, let's say, 800. So we extract features. For example, hey, what's their personality like? What titles do they hold? What are their recent activities on, publicly available sources? Once we come up with these features, we basically run them on the other 200, which becomes a sort of like, like validation sample. And we basically validate and come up with the model. And then each time you feed in more and more leads, the system just keeps getting better because it's a very tight feedback. Let's say, like after 3, 4 runs, you feed in the next 1,000. It becomes so good that, with 80% accuracy, it's able to give you, 200 out of the 1,000 that you should personalize your messages to. And this is basically the essence of growth gravity and what we are developing in house.
Got it. That's very interesting because you're right. The conversation in the recent days has become more about personalization than automation. And, honestly, people are beginning to realize that you can't do automation at scale. And so then the next wave of things is, you have a very interesting approach to it, which is to say, listen, maybe you don't have to do it at as much scale if I can get you to the right people. And the second approach to that is when you do have to do it at scale, can I help you figure out the signals much? I'll give you an example, right? So let me just share my screen, and this is somewhat related to what I talked about. Only 1,050 invitations that are pending. And if I were to quickly scroll through this, right, so there are probably people who are trying to sell me something that I might be interested in, right? But one is there is no way for me to get to the right conversations from here. Most people, like you can see, they don't even bother to put in a personalization because they are trying to play the numbers game that you described, which is, can I reach out to 1,000 people every week, right? And when you're trying to reach out to 1,000 people every week, you're just going to put in some message, right? Or you're not going. You're just going to send them a very generic, introduction saying, "Hey, I'm so and so, and it's all about you," right? There's no personalization. So this is kind of the challenge that, and this is amplified in every aspect of sale, right? So whether you're thinking of it from, outreach, whether you're thinking of the messaging when you're having that first conversation, when you're thinking of the messaging during the time of a call and a demo, at each of those times, that personalization needs to be there. And part of that is, of course, being able to listen better, right? But listening doesn't always mean listening in the context of the conversation, but listening also in terms of, hey, understanding the signals from what they have been saying on social media or other places. And I think the challenge is twofold. One is, can you personalize effectively? And the second part of it is, how do you personalize without infringing on someone's personal space, right? And what is the purpose of that personalization? Because the personalization shouldn't be like, I can hyper personalize something and say, and make it all about you, the person that I'm selling to, but that still doesn't mean that it's relevant, right? I can say, hey, you know what, you have great black eyes and you're wearing a great V-neck T-shirt, but that doesn't say anything about why we should be talking, right? And so there are different kind of things that people struggle with I've been part of conversations where I've heard a customer complain that, listen, why did you go to my parents' Facebook profile and from my kids' photos? Like, that's just not on. But the thing is that, at the same time, I'm also able to say, hey, thanks so much for sending me the onesie when my kid was born because you saw a photo on Facebook, right? Both are parts of the same thing, which is you're trying to listen on social media about the context of your customer, but there is also a lot of subtlety to it.
Definitely. And I've had people, like approach me with such, hey, we share a blue shirt in common. Let's connect. I mean, it wasn't that personalized, but he was almost, going to that level. So I've seen, uh, people in sales trying to over personalize. So I think there's no benefit in doing that either, especially if the other party does not want to be contacted. And the product you're selling has no relevance to the prospect or the lead that you're trying to reach out to. I think it's pointless to even make that effort.
I think that's why perhaps contextualization is a better word, which is, you're bringing it in the filter of what they think about or what they care about, rather than about them, but about their.
Basically selling to who wants to be sold to. I like to compare this to, like two scenarios, like the McDonald's outlet, going to a Rolex store to buy a Rolex. Basically, when you're selling B2C, you can afford to go for a more, mass distribution, McDonald's tactic where, hey, we're giving away like toys with the burgers you eat. And it's pretty cheap. So we're not going to make a huge effort. We're just going to advertise a small toy, and you're going to come. But B2B is not like that. You have to contextualize. Like if I'm a company, like that's I don't know, like that's in aviation. I might be more interested in meeting an embedded systems outsourcing company than a company that I don't know, like develops augmented reality for media. It doesn't make any sense for me to do that. I should be able to sort of provide them value, show the value proposition better. Just as it is when you go to a Rolex store where they talk about, hey, like this is all handcrafted, it's going to look so good on you, etc., etc. So I feel good about and it's a higher value ticket that you're trying to sell for. It's not like $10, consumer product. So which is why contextualization and a bit of personalization is very, very important in B2B. And this is something that's escaping most organizations because they all think, oh, we have a bunch of tools that can do automated outreaches, and we have all these beautiful tools that can give us 10,000, 20. It's not so easy. I think with contextualization and personalization, as you're able to engage your customers better, number one, you'll lower the resources on outspend on yourself. Number two is your customers are going to be happier. They're going to refer better, and in B2B referrals matter a lot, as I'm sure you've experienced too.
Taking that a step further, right? Like what, or maybe just thinking of the different examples. I think you gave a great example in terms of, the challenge of personalization being partially not knowing whom to personalize for, right? And narrowing down that funnel. The other challenge is, I look at this as the asymmetry of listening versus talking, right? That's one part of it. The second part of it, everybody wants to broadcast, everybody wants to put out videos, everybody wants to put out content, everybody wants to send out emails, but nobody has the bandwidth to read. And what it means is that you need to kind of draw their attention. And when you get their attention, you need to make sure that it's worth their while, right? Hard enough to get someone on a sales call, right? You've probably prospected across 1,000 people. You've probably filtered out 900 of them, said 100 are relevant to you. You probably personalized and reached out to those 100 people. And then when you have maybe those 5 people on the call with you, you're making the mistake of giving them the most general message that you can. And that's where personalization and contextualization plays an important part, which is two things. One is understanding and contextualizing it to the problem that they have just mentioned to you. And two is understanding what might be the problems, what might be the situation based on their size, their team, their stage in the company, so that you can give them the most relevant things, right? So a very simple example that people love is storytelling, right? So when I'm talking about a customer, if I'm pitching to you and say, listen, you know what, we have the most secure platform, and I say Amazon uses it, right? You might be like, yeah, okay, but you're probably not bowled over by it because you're thinking, you know what, I'm too small. Amazon is too big. This is probably not going to work for me. I probably need like engineers to deploy this shit, etc. But if I came and told you, listen, there are these three other companies in the same location as you that have been using us for the last 6 months, and this is what they've seen, that's kind of where it piques your interest. And that's where contextualization and personalization plus great storytelling comes into play. So then the light goes off and you don't have to worry about, hey, what is it that needed to happen? You don't need to kind of put the pieces together. You can, I can put the pieces together for you and contextualize that solution for exactly what you are facing. Market is saying.